Welcome to this podcast brought to you by the Vatican Observatory Foundation. I'm your host, Bob Trembley. I'm a volunteer NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, the president of Michigan's Warren Astronomical Society, and an internet factotum for the Vatican Observatory Foundation. This podcast comes from a recording of one of our monthly full moon meetups with the Vatican Observatory staff and Sacred Space Astronomy subscribers. Sacred Space Astronomy is the Vatican Observatory's online community. We have several astronomers and scholars who write articles on our website about astronomy, space science, and faith in science. Every full moon, the Vatican Observatory Foundation hosts a Zoom meetup for our Sacred Space Astronomy subscribers. Typically, our guest will be a member of the Vatican Observatory staff or an affiliated researcher, and they'll tell us about the research they're doing and the journey that led them to the Vatican Observatory. Brother Guy Consolmagno, director of the Vatican Observatory and president of the Vatican Observatory Foundation, will typically talk with our guest, and our Sacred Space Astronomy subscribers can ask them questions. The audio for this podcast was taken from the Full Moon Meetup on Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Our guest was Reverend Richard A. D'Souza, S.J., the incoming director of the Vatican Observatory. He takes the reins from Brother Guy Consolmagno on September 19th, 2025. Brother Guy will continue with the presidency of the Vatican Observatory Foundation, doing an extraordinary amount of traveling outreach and co-hosting more Full Moon Meetups.
And now we get on to the main event, which is to greet Father Richard D'Souza. So tell us, where are you and what's the weather?
So hi, everybody. I'm Father Richard D'Souza. I'm finally at the Vatican Observatory in Rome. I've been traveling the last few weeks, and I just got back last night. And I was holidaying in Spain, in Madrid, Segovia, and Granada. Lovely weather out there. Also in some very remote areas of Spain where you could see the sky totally, and it was really good. I got back from Rome yesterday evening. My fellow Jesuits picked me up at the airport, brought me a change of formal clerical wear, and took me straight to the Vatican for a festival of the families of the Vatican employees. So all of the Jesuits were present there. All our workers were also present there. And the Pope suddenly appeared and wished everyone, and there was food. It was a nice, fun event. But that went on very late. Didn't get any chance to see the night sky. And today evening, some of our guys are going back into Rome for the lunar eclipse. So they will be doing a public viewing on Monte Mario, which is a former Jesuit site started by Father Angelo Secchi, now belonging to the Italian Astronomical Society. And I hope also to get out and see the lunar eclipse tonight. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, since we record these and sometimes we get around to turning them into actual podcasts, I'm going to start with a formal introduction as if nobody knew who you were.
Okay.
It is our delight today to have with us the future director of the Vatican Observatory, Father Richard D'Souza, and by the time you hear this, he will probably be the current director of the Vatican Observatory. We also looked through our records, and as far as we can tell, you were perhaps the first person ever interviewed on one of these monthly meetups. So you've been through this routine before, but a lot of people may not know who you are. So let's start out by telling, who are you and what kind of work do you do? Where do you come from and why do you do it?
Okay. So I'm Father Richard D'Souza, and I hail originally from Goa, India. It's a small, it was a former Portuguese colony on the west side of India, south of Mumbai. It's one of the few places of India which was never under the British. So we were a colony of the Portuguese right till the 60s. So my family hails from Goa, but a Christian family. Goa is very Catholic. It's 70% Catholic. But I grew up in the Middle East, in Kuwait, where my parents worked, right up to the first Gulf War in 1990. And after the first Bush administration started the Gulf War in Kuwait, we left Kuwait as refugees. So I was age 12, and through Iraq, Syria, much of the Middle East, right up to Jordan. And from there, we were airlifted back to India. So that was my first 12 years. I went back to India, went back to Goa, and that's where I met the Jesuits. I went to a Jesuit school, St. Brito High School, graduated from there. And after I finished my higher secondary schooling, I immediately joined the Jesuit novitiate at a very young age of 17, almost a minor. I did the normal Jesuit education, most of it in India. So we have the various stages of Jesuit formation. I was asked by my Jesuit superiors to do a degree in physics at the University of Mumbai, St.Xaviers College. That's where I picked up my interest in physics. And after that, I went to the University of Heidelberg to do my master's. Interesting fun fact, I did not know anything about Germany at that time. And my Jesuit superior, local provincial said, write to the senior most Jesuit astronomer in Rome and ask them their advice. So I finally wrote to George Coyne, asking him which of the 4 Jesuit German universities I should finally accept. And he pointed me to the University of Heidelberg. So I ended up being in Heidelberg for 3 years, did my master's, worked at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy under a guy named Hans-Walter Rix, an old friend of the observatory, who also taught at our summer school. After that, in 2005, that's also the same time I met Brother Guy for the first time in 2004, along with the other present members of the observatory. We were all young recruits at that time. I went back to India, studied philosophy, theology, worked a bit, got ordained. And in 2012, I was sent by my Jesuit superiors back to Germany to finish up a doctorate at the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics in Garching, Munich. So that's where I worked, finished my degree in 2016. It was then also in 2016 that that's less than 9 years ago. I formally joined, Brother Guy accepted me into the observatory, but I spent the first 3 years at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor doing a postdoctorate with Professor Eric Bell. And at 2019, after I finished that stint, I came back to the observatory in Castel Gandolfo, since I have been here since then. In 2022, I was given the additional responsibility of being superior of the house here, of the house in Tucson and Castel Gandolfo. And now 2025 as a new surprise. Okay, what do I work on? I haven't spoken of what I work on. So what my field of study is something far removed from our solar system. I study galaxies, and I study in particular how galaxies grow over time and how do they form their present day properties. In particular, I study galaxies the size of our Milky Way. The Milky Way is a very crowded place in the sense that many astronomers study the Milky Way, and many astronomers study galaxies far away, but there are very few astronomers who study galaxies in between, and I'm one of them. My particular area of study is to understand how mergers of galaxies influence their properties. So we do know that galaxies grow over time, and they grow by making their own stars and merging. And I particularly studied the second part of this thing of how do galaxies merge and what happens to them after they merge. So in short, I would call myself a galactic archaeologist. I studied the histories of galaxies. I think that's enough for now.
Right. Rosemary had mentioned that we were able to see Omega Centauri, this marvelous southern cluster from Tucson. It just peeks over the horizon.
Amazing.
My understanding, tell me if I've got this right, is that might be the nucleus of a galaxy that has merged into the Milky Way. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so my first paper was on Omega Cen. So that was many years ago. I studied the proper motions of Omega Centauri and calculated its mass. It's slightly bigger. It's the biggest globular cluster out there in the Milky Way. So it's called the globular cluster. It also has a spread in metallicities, which is atypical of globular clusters. So that gives you a sign that it probably was something bigger than a globular cluster, which was stripped out. The current theory is that it is the stripped nucleus of a dwarf galaxy which fell in a long time ago. And I think the most recent research on Omega Centauri done by some of my colleagues and friends is that they have finally found evidence of an intermediately massed black hole at the center of Omega Centauri.
Oh
So
my.
that would be about 1,000 solar masses type black hole, which is very difficult to detect. Yeah, so it's not a globular cluster. That's pretty much it.
That's fantastic. So, what made your superiors think that you might want to be a scientist? And in particular, what made you think you might want to be an astronomer?
Well, so I've always been interested in the sciences. I always thought myself more as an engineer than a scientist. So growing up, um, I, I enjoyed engineering more than the sciences. I think it was actually my Jesuit superiors who saw that there was something more in me that perhaps not doing doing something with yesterday's science, something new with yesterday's science, but discovering new science was something which was meant for me. And it was actually at their prompting that pushed me into a degree in physics rather than an engineering degree. I quickly got caught up, as is often the case in India, with the theoretical side of physics. uh, it's India is very strong in the theory, and gradually over time, I began to also appreciate how do you do good experiments, especially in astronomy. Astronomy is purely by chance, I think so, along the way. I first started off in particle physics. That was my initial intention when going to University of Heidelberg, was to do a degree in particle physics. Somewhere in the beginning of the second year, I get a call from my provincial, probably at the prompting of George Coyne, that I should perhaps do my thesis in astronomy. And it was a very gentle suggestion, and I took it up. So my first formal work with Omega Centauri was actually my first real looking up at the sky and trying to work with astronomical research. And then I got hooked on. It was great. I love the computing and I love the observation combination. It was great.
I have to ask, have you actually ever seen Omega Centauri?
I have. I have. From the northern hemisphere only. I have never seen it in the south. Every time I've been in the southern hemisphere, it's been either too cloudy or it was not visible. Yeah.
So you did this thesis work. You also, spent a lot of time in India in your formation. I understand that after you're ordained, you have a year of doing some sort of pastoral work before you go back. Can you describe a little bit of what you did during that year?
Oh, sure. So after I got ordained, I was fresh out of my degree of theology and feeling extra smart in theology. I thought it would be a great idea to convince my provincial to give me a free year to start a school for lay theology in the state of Goa. And so, along with a colleague, a young Jesuit priest, the two of us began a program called Deepen Your Faith, which was basically a theology program for about a year, where we covered scripture, we covered theology, basic theology, sacramental theology, liturgy, and it was just great. I enjoy teaching. One of the things I miss here in the observatory is teaching, but I enjoy teaching, and so that for full year I spent organizing this school for lay theology in the state of Goa, and the program still runs till today. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So at one point, you had to come from Europe to the United States. You spent 3 years in Ann Arbor. Looking at the crowd of people in this meetup today, I think about a third of us are Michiganders in one way or another. So
Yes.
tell me, what was it like showing up in Ann Arbor? Did your time in Germany prepare you for your time in the Midwest of the US?
Uh, no. Well, I know there is this German element in Michigan, where you have these fake Oktoberfests and fake fake beer. But I must say that my training in Germany was totally inadequate for being a scientist and also being a scientist in the American context. I like to tell this story in public, so maybe this is the type of shock this may what I encountered. So a month of so in my thesis, the German thesis is made up of 3 years, and each year you publish a paper. So it's three research topics, and very similar to each other, and you put them together, and that's your thesis, and you defend it. So I defended my thesis, but I really did not have enough time to finish the last part and put it into in a journal article. So it was not published. It was published in the thesis, but was not published as a journal article. So as soon as I get to Michigan and Ann Arbor, I tell the guy I'm working with, I just need a month to finish up this work. I'll finish it up and I will submit it, and then we can begin working on new projects. And Professor Eric Bell, who I knew a long time ago, and we were good friends, was very sympathetic to this. And I would often talk to him about the research, and he would just nod his head and in agreement, not fully convinced that his way of doing things was always to poke holes into your research project as a good training style. But there was some scatter in the results which I just couldn't explain, and I needed to write up the final discussion. I mean, I won't go into what exactly I was doing in that time, but after a bit of studying and a bit of of these seeds of doubt planted in me by Eric, I kept checking and checking the results and trying different ways to understand them. And I remember this very clearly on a Friday evening, about afternoon, I had suddenly made a plot which showed that my full paper was totally wrong. I convinced myself it was totally wrong. It was basically, because I was able to show that I thought my thesis showed that A was correlated with B, but what I really realized that A was correlated with C, which was also correlated with B, and it was just a wrong result. That's in short. And I go rushing into Eric's room and I show him the result. Eric, this is it. I mean, this is totally wrong. I can't believe this. And he says, "This looks right." I mean, it's right. Even you're the first person in the world to demonstrate this. It was a thing which was standardly used by everyone in the community. So it was a no-brainer that it was passed by the thesis committee, and I defended my thesis. But I was also very active at that time at the local parish. I was already as a priest at the St. Mary's student parish in Ann Arbor. And generally, this is a very educated parish. I mean, if you throw a stone, you'll hit somebody with a PhD. I remember we used to spend the full Saturday morning preparing the homily for Sunday, just because people would come to you after Mass, send you emails about their lecture notes and things like that. It was a very good job. So I'm here Friday evening, I'm destroyed. Full Friday evening, Saturday morning, instead of preparing the homily, I'm trying to fix the results to get a publishable paper. And I just don't succeed, and I just didn't have time to prepare the homily. So Saturday evening, I cook something up quickly, and I go up there and I say, "Dear everybody at the homily, I'm really sorry, but I have to just realize, I just realized that 1/3 of my PhD is wrong," and I give a homily about how we rush into results and we force our ideas onto nature, because everyone in the community believes that, but nature reveals itself slowly to us. And it was a decent homily. People liked it. After Mass, people congratulated me for the nice homily, and they always said, "We are very sorry, Father, for the bad luck you had." But it was interesting. Everybody was shocked in the parish. Everybody was shocked at that Mass. There was about 5 masses. This was one Mass, the 8:30 Mass in the morning. But the news spread in the full parish. Everybody started talking about it. Because I don't think it's common to go stand up and say that you failed in your research in the United States. So the first, I started walking home, and in the evening I was walking around, and I met people, and I'm sorry, Father, for your failed research. And the next week, the story goes on, and I meet people, and people are telling other people, and they would say, "Are you the guy who failed in his research?" And in the third week, it became so bad. "Are you the failed researcher who's also a priest?" So it was hilarious. It taught me how in the United States, things are very different from Germany. In Germany, you just say you're wrong and you go ahead. In the United States, there's a lot about presentation. There's a lot about presentation. You never admit that you are wrong in public. But it was interesting. It was a very interesting stuff. I have a good laugh every time I think about it.
How did you enjoy the weather in Ann Arbor?
The weather was okay. I was able to deal with the cold. I mean, it didn't bother me. I would walk every day to the university. It was okay for me. Driving was the only thing I would get scared of in the winter.
And what about the social climate? Did you get into any of the sports?
No. I was forced to go by my superior to a football game the second week I arrived, and that was it. And that was like an introduction, and that was it. No, I didn't get much into the sports. I really enjoyed the university and the parish. It was like, for me, a very intellectual, fertile environment. And the parish was lovely. But the sports was not my thing.
So you moving from Ann Arbor in that climate to Castel Gandolfo. You move out, and it must have been a radically different place. You've got a new language, a new culture. What was the culture shock of moving to Castel Gandolfo?
Oh, yeah. That was the biggest shock, moving to Castel Gandolfo. So moving from Germany to Ann Arbor was easier than moving from Ann Arbor to Castel Gandolfo. Well, first of all, you have to learn the language. The language is not easy. And more than the language, you need to learn the culture. And that too there are many nuances in the culture. Things are not straightforward. The Italian way of doing things is very different from the Anglo-Saxon way of doing things. Where you write letters here is also very different.
Can you
Formal
give an
letters.
example? Can you give an example?
So very simple. You write a formal letter in the United States or in Germany or in England. You say, you get straight to the point. You say, "I'm writing this letter to ask you for so and so permission." This is not done in Italy. You talk about everything else, and then on the last line, you by accident mention the thing that you want. And if you actually do write a letter formally, they will say the words "che brutta," how terrible, how ugly your letter is, because that's not the way you write that letter. So this is, at least in the Vatican, that's how it is. I mean, Kai, you know this better than me. So that's a culture. What was also hard for me here in Italy was the isolation a bit. So in Ann Arbor, you were in a lovely environment, which was very stimulating. In the university, in the department, you had many researchers. You would hear the latest things around the place. And in Castel Gandolfo, we were few astronomers. And it was the beginning of the pandemic when I moved in 2019. 2020, the pandemic hit. Travel was very difficult, so we still managed, and we were forced to do everything online. So and that was a good thing, I think, getting things to be done online. But I found that a bit more isolating. It took me some time to learn enough Italian to be brave enough to go to the local astronomical institutions, the Italian ones, and begin to collaborate with them. It took a good 3 years before I could start collaborating with them, because it was, and what's also interesting is that when I first came down and I wanted to collaborate with them, I spoke in English. They were welcoming, but it got nowhere. But the moment you start talking to them in Italian, doors open, and it became much more easier to collaborate.
What, now that you've been made the new director, do you have certain things in mind that I would say to clean up the messes of the previous director, or new directions that you would like to go? What's your dream for the observatory for the next 5 years?
Well, um, what I would like to do would be to create uh I think we need a new vision, which I do not have yet. And the reason why I'm saying this is the kind of vision we have had to now is pretty much the George Coyne vision, which was 78, 80, before the internet, before Zoom, before large astronomical experiments were underway. So today we have a lot more data available, a lot more telescope time, archival data. You get data freely. That's more the European model of doing things. And the question would be is to get the group together to 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 be able to look forward what will be the observatory in 10 to 15 years. How can we change direction and respond to the new ways in which the community is doing astronomy?
So how do you plan to do
So
that?
well, meetings, a lot of meetings, is getting people to start talking to each other, getting inputs from outside. I think
Hmm.
that's very important. Um,
And then
Asking the
there's something
astronomer.
in May that you're organizing, which I'm sort of leading you to.
Yes, so what we're planning is to do is in 2026, in May of 26, we'll get all the astronomers together. We did this last in 2019 under Guy. I was there for that. As I soon, and 2026, we'll get back together and we'll start discussing about the future. We'll be spending about a week together here in Italy. So it won't be in Castel Gandolfo. It'll be in an isolated place in the mountains in central Italy, so that everybody is fully on board, nobody's disturbed. And the idea would be to listen to ourselves, to each other, but also to listen to other people of what are we doing really great, and what can we reinforce, and what are the things that new ways in which we can go forward. One of my big dreams is also to, this is more a personal dream, and I hope the group will accept, would be to transform Castel Gandolfo into a new Aspen. Well, I don't know if Aspen means anything to the people in this group, but Aspen is there is an institute in Aspen which organizes round the year small conferences, workshops, kind of like a retreat, which they offer to groups around the world, mostly from the United States. And it's a lovely place to be locked up in, where astronomers and Phil lock up in, and they can work in peace. I mean, there are very few of these in Europe. There's one in Leiden, but nobody likes to get locked up in Leiden. The food's bad, and the site is good. So we've got this lovely garden, we've got this lovely environment, and to already offer our facilities, which my predecessors made and created, to use them and offer them as a sort of a retreat center for astronomers, for physicists to come here and have meetings. We've been having a series of we have a couple of meetings a year with the guy and this bride senior. We have had meetings where groups come over here, but this would be do this at a more regular pace. That would be my dream, to invite people to Castel Gandolfo. And my hope is also then inviting people to Castel Gandolfo will stimulate a good scientific environment out here.
What can you tell us about some of the younger Jesuits who might be in the pipeline, who might be, involved in 10 or 15 years from now doing astronomy?
Yeah, that will also be a priority for me to recruit new people. So just to give this a bit of a background, I think in the next 10 years, a number of the Jesuits on the staff will retire. I can count at least 3 to 4. So, and we need to replenish that. And by our experience in the last few years, we know that it takes a long time to identify, train a Jesuit. So we are talking anytime from 5 to 10 years. If you think that I first met Brother Guy in 2004, and then I ended up at the observatory in 2016 and formally at Castelcan 2019. That's a good 14 years. At least in my case, I'm a slow learner, so maybe that's why it took longer. The others came in faster. But it's going to take some time, so it's good to identify them young. So we have a couple of guys who we have identified in the last few years. One of them is an Australian, Matthew Pinson, who probably also was at the meetup and who has spoken to this group. There's Sean from South Africa, who is a very promising candidate, a bit on the younger side, but I think he also may have spoken to this group. We have another young Jesuit whose name escapes me, but he's from Congo. He's a theoretical physicist. Williams de Longa, who will probably join us at within 2 to 3 years. So he's ready with his PhD. He's an ordained priest. He would need some formal training in as a postdoc, 2 to 3 years, and then he'll be ready to join us. So we have a good 3 to 4 people in the pipeline. There's probably Adam Hinks, who probably will join us sometime in the future. And there are a few younger, uncertain candidates, let's put it this way. What I am hoping for, and one of the things that we are trying to do is we realize, at least coming from India and from Asia, I've also realized that if that's where the Jesuit vocations are. And in the future, in the next 20 years, we would need to find candidates in those areas. The disadvantage is that they do not have the university setups like the United States or Europe. And what I'm doing now is working with the provincials of these areas, so Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. And the idea is, so the thing to remember is, if a young man expresses to the provincial that he would like to be an astronomer, and if the provincial is not convinced of it, he could dismiss it and we would lose that man forever. In the West, it would be more easier for a younger man to express his desire repeatedly until the provincial caves in. But that would be more difficult in the East. And the hope is that they could direct younger men to us if they are aware of our work right at the beginning. And so we are having a group of all the provincials of the Jesuit provincials are coming to Rome in October. And we're taking advantage of that to invite them to the Specula. And Brother Guy will be there and we will take them around. These are some of the things we are thinking for the recruiting. But recruitment is going to be a big priority.
Mentioning the reaction of people in India, what's been the reaction in India to the fact that there's an Indian who is now the director of the Vatican Observatory?
Well, very positive. Quite positive. People are quite happy about it. People, especially from the areas where I come from, Goa, but I've had good positive reactions from all over. I've been also answering a lot of interview questions, which have been posed to me by various journalists, Italians, Spanish, French. And one of the strangest questions I've got is, now that the Vatican has an Indian director as of the Vatican Observatory, does this mean that the technological prowess of India is finally taking over the Vatican? And I had to reply and say, no, it's just that that's what they don't have anybody else. So that's they do. It's not that I'm the best candidate. I'm the only candidate. That would probably be
That's not totally true.
but that was a funny. That was a really funny question. We get some strange questions at these interviews.
Well, this is great. To finish up, we have and if people have questions, then be sure to type them into the chat. But I will end up with how have you interacted so far with Pope Leo? It's interesting that you're coming on board at the same time that we have a new papacy. What has been your reactions and your interactions with Pope Leo?
So they have been lovely. I've met him now on three separate occasions. The first time was at the summer school when we had an audience with him. At that occasion, I think my papers were passing through his desk. So when Brother Guy introduced me as Father Richard D'Souza, he just turns around and says, "I know that name from somewhere." But so he was probably reading through my files and approving it. Around the mid of July, he did come to the observatory on a very informal visit. And Father David Brown and I accompanied him for close to 2.5 hours, showing him the various telescopes of the domes. David explained more the telescopes, I explained the science, and it was lovely interacting with him during this time. He's very quiet. He's very receptive, very humble. He cracks a joke or two. He cracked a joke about Pluto. And something else which I can't remember. And we had planned a visit. We were told at the last minute. We had planned a visit for half an hour. We showed him the telescope, the two telescopes, and then we asked him, "Do you have time or interest to see the other thing?" And it just went on for half an hour more. We kept extending that time. It was just his interest. It was also very nice. This visit there was just the four of us, so his secretary, himself, Father David, and myself. And there were no journalists, no photographs were taken. And he was totally at ease. He was totally at ease. And it was just really great being with him. And I met him yesterday again, very briefly. But there he was surrounded by hordes of people who wanted to wish him. And one of the very nice things was we had this family festival for the Vatican employees. I mean, the Pope could have just come, shown up, greeted everybody, and then gone away. But he spent a good 2 hours with the people, which was amazing. It was a very tough. I could see his guards, the gendarmerie, sweating because they were like really around him and trying to keep the crowds from really crushing him. But he wanted to be there. He wanted to be there and greet everybody. He blessed one of our employees who's pregnant, Sunta. And it was really nice. It was really nice. So positive, very positive.
Right. I should point out the other time that the Pope came the next day after the meeting with you, with David, and there were a couple of photographers there, so we've got some nice pictures.
We've got some photos for that, yes.
Yeah, for that.
Yeah. He also apologized to David when he gave us half an hour notice on both occasions, and then the second time he apologized for giving us short notice. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's been great having you here, and great hearing some of your ideas of where the speckle is going to be going next. And I'm delighted, I think I speak for everybody on board here, it's delighted to have you. Thanks so much for spending the time with us. Get out there and have a chance to go look at the lunar eclipse that's happening, because we always do these during the full moon, and that's when lunar eclipses occur. So give my best to everybody in Italy, and thanks for joining us here.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That's a wrap for this podcast. The audio editor for this podcast was myself, Bob Trembley. You can listen to our other podcasts and read our posts on the web at vaticanobservatory.org. If you'd like to attend our full moon meetups and talk with our guests live, join our Sacred Space Astronomy community, also at VaticanObservatory.org. Clear skies, everyone!